Okay, hi, Michael. I wanted to ask you a few questions. Last time we spoke about Ajata, and I'll get into that in a moment. But the first question I have is that when you turn your intention in and inquire, who am I? What experiences take place? What does one feel? What does one really learn? And what has your experience been? Because my experience is that when I try and turn inward, I either fall asleep or my mind travels.
Right. Um, yes. the, our, our aim is to attend to ourselves, but um, the mind slips away in two ways. Either the attention gets diverted away towards thoughts, other thoughts, or it falls into sleep. Our aim is to remain balanced between these two, neither getting carried away by thoughts nor falling asleep. We need to remain in a state of alert self-attentiveness. With regard to what experience takes place, or what does one feel, or what does one learn, and you had added also, is it like falling down a rabbit hole? What epiphany occurs? Um, it is not like anything. Um, and also, we are not looking for an experience. We're not looking for anything to happen. What we are investigating is not any happening or doing. We are investigating being. We're investigating what is. That is, we're investigating I am. So uh, nothing should happen. If something is happening, our attention is going away from ourselves, because our real nature is pure being, pure awareness, in which nothing ever happens. That is the meaning of Ajata. Ajata means non. Um, Literally, it means not born, but it implies nothing. There's been no arising, no happening. It is just the state of being. So that is what we're investigating. So when we turn our attention within, nothing happens as such. However, there is a difference between attending to ourselves and attending to other things. When we're attending to other things, um, attending to other things is a mental activity. It's a movement of our mind away from ourselves towards objects. In self attentiveness, there's no such movement. It's a state of just being. But it's also a state of clarity. When we're attending to other things, there is never a moment when we are not aware, I am. I am is the constant background of whatever we may experience. I am aware of this, I am experiencing this, I am talking, I'm walking, I am doing whatever. The I is the basic the ground on which all other experiences are superimposed. So we're just trying to remain with that ground. Um, in that, when our attention is on other things, though we're always aware of I am, because we are overlooking I am, so to speak, there's a lack of clarity. For example, if you go to a cinema and you watch a very interesting film, your attention is on the film all the time. What you're actually looking at is a screen, but you don't notice the screen because you're interested in the picture show that's going on the screen. Likewise, though I am is the constant background to all experience, we overlook it because of our interest in phenomena, our interest in things, that what's happening, what's appearing and disappearing. So, because we're overlooking it, we have a lack of clarity. The self awareness is there, but it's not entirely clear. We're aware that I am, but we're not aware what I am. The more we uh, turn our attention towards ourselves and become familiar with just being in that state of just being self-attentive, there's an increase in clarity. That it's not anything tangible. It's not anything that can be described in words, but somehow we become more and more clearly aware of ourselves as something other than this body and mind that we are constantly identifying ourselves with. So it's something very subtle. It's not an experience as such. It's not. There's no object of experience there. It is a quality of experience, a clarity of experience, clarity of self-experience. We're not experiencing anything new because we're always aware I am, but we are aware that we are with a greater degree of clarity.
Okay.
Does that
So
make sense?
when you say I am,
Yes.
explain I am. Is it the small I am? Is it God I am?
There's only one I. When we say, what does I am mean? It's I exist. So I am basically means I exist. However, it implies more than just existence, because I is unlike other pronouns. Other pronouns refer to objects, and objects are insentient, whereas I refers to the one who is aware of other objects. So I is always referring to that which is aware. So when we say I am, we are not only, the implied meaning is not only I exist, but also I am aware of my existence. So I am is refers to Satchit, our fundamental awareness of our own existence.
Okay.
That is
And
the ground. Awareness of other things comes and goes. In waking and dream, we're aware of so many other things. In sleep, we're not aware of anything else. But the ground, the basic awareness is just the fundamental awareness I am. That is what is constant.
okay, which will lead you naturally back to who am I?
Well, who am I? Who am I is turning our attention back towards I am. They, now I am is mixed with adjuncts. We are aware I am, but we're not aware just I am. You are aware I am Kevin. I am aware I am Michael. So now we're experiencing this I am mixed and conflated with adjuncts. When we turn our attention back towards ourselves, we are trying to focus our attention not on the adjuncts, but just on the I am. The more our attention is focused on on I am, the more the adjuncts drop off, so to speak, the more they recede into the background. So we begin to become aware of ourselves in our pure naked state. Naked means the state bereft of all adjuncts.
Okay. In Ajata, of course, Ajata means that nothing ever came to be and nothing, it means nothingness. So where does the I am fall? Why even ask, who am I? Inquire.
I am is not something that appears and disappears. It is the constant background. In the state of Ajata, all other things have their rising. All phenomena appear and disappear. Even the subject who's aware of all these phenomena, namely ego, appears and disappears. The ego is that which is aware of itself as I am Kevin. That appears in waking and dream, disappears in sleep. But when I am Kevin disappears in sleep, I am remains. So I am is the fundamental reality. So that alone, Ajata is that state in which we know I alone am. Nothing has ever had its rising. Nothing has ever appeared or disappeared. What is as it is, eternally and without any change. What is I am.
Okay. And last time we spoke about Ajata, I had told you that I had heard certain people say that because nothing exists, that includes the absolute or God. And you and I had talked about that, and you had said something exists, but you're giving it a name, you're giving it a form, so that doesn't exist because that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. What exists is beyond words, but the closest we can get to describing it in words is I am. That is, what exists is we can use words, but the words are only pointers, because it can't be, that which is beyond mind cannot be caught in words. Words are a tool of the mind, but the words are only pointers. That is, the nature of what is awareness. And being awareness, it is always aware of itself as I am. So that is what we actually are. That is the fundamental reality. That is what always exists without ever appearing or disappearing or undergoing any change. So what is called Ajata is that state, that pristine state of I am, in which there's the clarity that I alone exist. Even now, I alone exist. But it seems, so long as I contract myself as a form, there seem to be so many forms, so many things. There's subject, not so many objects. There seems to be all this multiplicity. None of this is real. What is real is only I am. So when we turn our attention back within and merge back into I am, when we ego, what is aware of all other things is ego. Ego is a false awareness of ourself, because as ego, we're always aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am so-and-so, I'm such and such a person, I'm Kevin or I'm Michael or whoever. That is not what we actually are. What we actually are is just pure awareness. So ego is a false awareness of ourselves. When we turn our attention back within keenly enough to see what we actually are, we will see that we have always been what we actually are, and we have never risen as ego. Since we've never risen as ego, everything that has an appearance, an arising, everything that is born in whose view? Only in the view of this ego. So when ego is eradicated, when ego is found to be ever non-existent, everything else will be found to be ever non-existent, and what is alone will be known to be existing.
Okay, thanks. Somewhere
But
in one,
who is it who realizes that? It is not this ego. It is not Kevin. It is not Michael. When this ego is removed and everything else removed along with it, what is always aware of itself as it is remains aware of itself as it always is. So what is called Atma-vichara or enlightenment or self-realization or whatever names people call it, it's not anything new. It is just that fundamental awareness I am, bereft of all adjuncts, bereft of all phenomena.
okay, thanks. So this is such a subtle, funny question. I was going to say, well, the question would be, why does one have an ego? But if you really examine it, if you examine what is the ego, it doesn't exist. So the question doesn't really even exist.
Exactly.
And yet
People often used to ask Bhagavan, then why did the ego come into existence? How did the ego come into existence? Bhagavan said, first find that ego and bring it to me. Then we can find out how it comes into existence. If you look for it, there's no such thing to be found. We seem to be ego only when we're looking away from ourselves at other things. When we look back at ourselves, there's no ego to be found.
most people don't look within, they look without. And there is this experience, whether it's because you're the dreamer in the dream having the dream, you know, you wonder, why is there even a dream? This seems like such a pain, you know. It would be nice if you could just sort of turn it in to I am and stay there.
That's our aim. That we can, this question why, we can answer in two ways. One is the most practical answer is investigate to see whether this ego has ever come into existence. If you search for it, there's no such thing to be found. And if ego hasn't risen, nothing else has arisen, because everything that arises only in the view of ego. That is the most practical answer. If you want a more philosophical answer, what is the cause for the appearance of everything else? Everything else appears only when we rise as ego, because it's only in the view of ego that other things appear. In sleep, we don't rise as ego, so nothing else appears. In waking dream, we rise as ego and everything else appears. So ego is the first cause. The creator of all this multiplicity is ego. It's only our rising at ego that causes all these things. So there's no cause prior to the first cause. If we were to find a cause for ego, then what is the cause for that? We have to go on back. We are searching for the first cause. The first cause, we can't go further back than ego, because when ego doesn't rise, nothing else is there. There's only pure awareness, and pure awareness doesn't cause anything, because pure awareness just is as it is. So the first cause, the cause of all other causes, is only ego. Only when we rise as ego is there cause, does cause and effect come into existence. In sleep, there's no cause or effect or anything. There's just being. So in being, there's no cause and effect. When there's a rising, the first rising is the rising of ego, then cause and effect comes into existence. So since ego is the first cause, it is the cause without any other cause. That's the philosophical answer. The practical answer is first see whether it's risen. If you look to see if it's risen, you find there's no such thing. And since there's no ego, what is alone is as it is and as it always has been, and there's never any change, any appearance or disappearance. That is why Ajata is the final experience.
So it's very simple. It's
extreme. What can be simpler than one?
Right.
One of the things that said in the Upanishads about ourself or about Brahman, whatever term is used to describe it, one only without a second. So we are that which alone exists, nothing else exists. So what can be simpler than one? You can't get simpler than one. One without a second is the simplest of all states. That is the state of Ajata. That is our real nature, our natural state. That is what we actually are even now.
Okay.
But in order to see that we are that, we need to look at ourselves. When we look at ourselves, we will see, oh, I always knew I was that. But so long as we are rising as ego and looking at other things, we seem to be unaware of that. We are always aware I am, but we're not clearly aware what I am, because we mistake ourselves to be something other than I am.
So when Ramana speaks of that everything is predestined, he's speaking about the dream and the ego.
Yeah, it's the dream. It's all that's in the dream, yes.
Okay. And somewhere, I forget which book it was, I remember Ramana saying, if you have a desire to know this, you'll know it. It's not
yes,
different.
Yes. That's all. Bhagavan has said there's nothing simpler than knowing and being what we actually are, because we're already that. However, it seems to us to be difficult. Why does it seem difficult? It is only because of our desire and attachment for things other than ourselves. Because you can always see the screen. The screen is always there in front of you. When you go to the cinema, why don't you see the screen? Though you're always seeing the screen, it's as if you're not seeing the screen. Why? Because you're so interested in the pictures. So long as you're interested in the pictures, you're overlooking the screen. We need to be so passionately interested in seeing only the screen. The screen in this case is not out there. The screen is, we are the screen. That we need to be passionately interested in knowing ourselves and nothing other than ourselves. So long as we have even the slightest desire to be aware of other things, our mind will be going out away from ourselves.
Okay.
That is why this Bhagavan said, investigating what this ego is giving up everything. We must be willing to give up everything in order to remain as we actually are. That's why he said in another way, he said, Bhakti is the mother of jnana. Bhakti means love or devotion. I mean, normally people think of Bhakti as the dualistic devotion, but the real Bhakti is the love just to be as we actually are. So that without that love, we will never remain as we actually are, because if we don't have love to be as we actually are, we will have desire to rise and know other things. So we have to choose this or that. Either we want to go out or we want to go in. There's no halfway in between.
I think
Now our mind still has a taste in going outwards. So by practice, we need to cultivate this liking to go within. By constantly trying to turn our attention back within, slowly we are weakening our desire, our attachment, our interest in other things, and we are strengthening that love just to be as we actually are.
So when you do this yourself,
yes,
you're in the middle of a day of working or whatever it is
yeah.
that you do,
Yeah.
and you turn your attention in. Is there I know you said there wasn't an experience, but you must think or feel something, or some change.
Well, the change is not an addition, it's a dropping off. That is, the more we turn our attention towards ourself, towards I, our awareness, other things recede into the background of our awareness. We can, in practice, we can do this even in the midst of other activities. For example, if you're going for a walk or if you're doing this or that, you can be turning your attention towards I. But so long as we're in the body and mind are engaged in other things, it seems those activities require at least some of our attention. Truly speaking, if we go deep into this, we'll find they don't need any attention. Everything goes on as it's meant to go on. But it seems to us now that things require attention. For example, if you're driving your car, if you're going to work and you have to drive your car, most of it actually driving a car requires minimal attention, but it does require some minimal attention, it seems. When you get to your place of work, if you try to remember, or was the light red there, or was I able to, you won't be able to remember the details of your journey because it was only a small amount of your attention was on the journey. You were thinking other thoughts or whatever. So generally speaking, it seems to us when we're in the early stages of practice, it seems that activities require at least some degree of attention. So when we're engaged in other activities, we can be self-attentive, but our self-attentiveness is not very deep. Whereas there are other times when we've got no other activity making any demand on us, we can sit quietly or lie in bed or whatever. It doesn't matter. The position of the body doesn't matter. We can turn our attention deeper within at such times. But this is only, the difference between these two is only a matter of degree. Our aim is to be as keenly self-attentive as we can. That is, we try to focus our attention. Even say focus the attention, it sounds a bit like it's a concentration, but it's not exactly. We need to be intently interested in being self-attentive. And the more we're interested in being self-attentive, the more other things recede into the background. If you're traveling on a train and you're reading a very interesting book, so many things may be happening around you. The train is moving and people are going back and forth and all sorts of things are happening. But you don't know, you hardly notice any of those things because you're so interested in your book. The train may even stop at a station. But if you're really interested in the book, you don't even notice which stations have passed and which stations are yet to come because your attention is on the book. In exactly the same way, when we are reading the book of our heart, in other words, when we're attending only to ourselves, the keener our interest in being self-attentive, the less we will be aware of other things. So it is what we experience is not an addition, it is a subtraction. Things withdraw into the background, and then what is ever present alone remains and shines more clearly. That is the sun of pure awareness, the fundamental awareness I am.
I love
which is beyond words. We can't put it in words. I mean, we can only, that's why almost inevitably the description becomes negative. Everything else withdraws and what is remains. That's all we can say.
I think dropping off is perfect
Yeah,
because it's even simpler than meditation because you
yeah,
don't have to focus on your breathing. You don't have to recite any mantras. You
yeah,
simply just drop off
yeah, yeah.
or
Well,
fall down the.
everything else drops off. You hold on. You remain with yourself. You hold on to the center. But it's not a. It's just a holding on means here just being the center.
Yeah. Have you found a swell of interest in Ajata in the last uh, short amount of time in the last year or so?
Not particularly. I find most people, it's not a thing most people touch upon. And when people do touch upon it, often there's a lot of misunderstanding about it.
I see. Okay.
But it's not, Bhagavan also didn't give, he made it clear the final state is Ajata, but he also said Ajata is not a teaching. In the state of Ajata, there's no one to be taught and no one to teach. There is just being. For practical purposes, teaching has to accept. In Ajata, there's no problem. There's no ego. There's no one seeking liberation. There's no one in bondage, nothing. But now to us, there seems to be a problem. So the teaching has to accept the appearance, the seeming existence of all this. And it says this. So Bhagavan does, he accepts. Bhagavan's deepest work is a work called Ulujunaptu, 40 verses on what is. And in the main text, the first verse of the main text begins, because we see the world. Bhagavan began with those words very deliberately. Actually, the first word in Tamil is we. We, the world, because see, is the order of words in Tamil. Why he said that is, teachings are necessary. If we didn't see the world, who is it who sees the world? It is only when we raise his ego that we see the world. So you have to first accept that there's a problem before you can give a solution to the problem. So Bhagavan first acknowledges, yes, we see the world. As he's not seeing the world, but he has to accept our seeing the world. He's because we see the world, and then he goes on to that is through many verses. He constantly put all this. This world appears to whom? To me. Who is this me? It's only when we rise as ego that the world appears. So the teaching he gives is what is called Drishti Shrishti Vada. That is, it doesn't take Drishti means seeing or perception. Shrishti means creation. It doesn't accept that there's any creation independent of our seeing it. That is, all these things appear because we see them. When we don't see them, they don't exist. In other words, nothing exists independent of our perception of it. That's the fundamental philosophical basis. So the problem is our seeing it. So who is it who's seeing it? I am. We turn our, that I there means ego. That is, it's the adjunct mixed I. That is, as he says in one of the verses, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms as and how? What he means by that is, it's only when we rise as ego and project and identify a body as ourself, but we see all these other forms. So the root problem is our rising as ego. So how to deal with this rising as ego? So long as we're looking outwards, we're feeding ego. Because looking outwards, ego is grasping the forms, constantly perceiving things. When ego tries to turn back to see itself, because ego is a formless phantom, as he describes it, it subsides and disappears. Because it doesn't actually, it's got no form of its own. Now as ego, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body. But this body, in dream, it takes some other body as I. So it's got no form of its own. So it's not the body. It's also not Satchit. Satchit is the fundamental awareness I am. It's not that. But it takes these two, it joins these two together and conflates them as if I am the body. I am is awareness. This body is non-aware. How can they be the same? But in our experience, in the experience of ego, we're always aware of ourselves as I am this body. So that is, Bhagavan goes to the root problem. It's this rising of ego is the root problem. And we will continue rising as ego so long as we're looking away from ourselves. If we look back to see what we actually are, ego dissolves and disappears because it's got no substance. It's only when it's clinging to forms, it seems to exist. When it tries to turn back onto itself, it dissolves back into the pure awareness from which it arose.
Okay. You mentioned this was a book, 40 verses.
Yes.
And what's the name of the book again?
Ulladu Napadu. Ulladu means what is. Napadu means 40. I can send you a link. I've got it on my, I've translated it in my blog. I'll send you a link to that.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. The only other thing I heard you say recently in one of your videos when you're speaking with somebody else is that Ramana is always within the heart. Of course, this is within the dream, because in Ajata, even Ramana doesn't exist.
Yes, but yes. Ramana is not a person. He seems to us, so long as we take ourselves to be a person, he seems to be a person. But what he actually is the heart itself. He is that which is always shining within us as I am.
So ultimately, really nothing matters but I am.
Exactly.
And there's nothing to I am. I mean,
no,
in
it just is as it is.
So when a bill comes or a person aggravates you or there's a political...
They don't aggravate I am. They aggregate the one who is aware of itself as I am Michael or I am Kevin.
Right.
In sleep, you may have hundreds of bills to pay, but in sleep you forget all of them. You're perfectly happy.
So the hippies had it right. Just drop off.
Yep. Drop out.
Drop out. Yeah. That's great. Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Your work and David Godman's work are very interesting. They're very different from each other in a way, but they're very, very interesting. Have you ever met David, by the way, David Godman?
Yeah. David and I, we arrived in Tiruvannamalai the same year, 1976. So we've known each other for, nearly 45 years now.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, great. All right. Well, I appreciate it. And I'll drop off now.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll edit this and I'll put it on my YouTube channel. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
And I'll also send you a link to Ulladu Napadu.
Has that been printed at all or no?
There are many translations that have been printed, but I'm not satisfied with any of the printed translations. Okay. Because it's a very simple work, but very, very deep and very subtle. And there are many things that people don't correctly understand. Mm. Yeah. For example, just one example, Bhagavan uses a simple pronoun in Tamil, tan, and various forms of it. Tan means oneself. It can, depending on the context, it can refer to oneself as ego or oneself as one actually is. In some verses, he uses the same word, both to refer to what we actually are and to refer to ourself as ego. There's one verse where he says, oneself, the source of oneself. So when you translate it, you need to understand what he's referring to. So many places where he's referring to ego, people think he's referring to our real nature. So unless people have a deep understanding of his teachings, they can easily misinterpret it. But if you've got a deep understanding of his teachings, what he says in Ulladu Napadu is so simple and so blindingly clear. But if the mind can misinterpret anything. That words are always imperfect. Because however carefully you express something in words, other people will see it according to the way according to their ideas, their beliefs and everything.
Yeah.
So people overlook the simplicity of Bhagavan's teaching. They're always looking for something more complicated there than is actually there.
Yeah. Did you get much reaction to the first video we did on Ajata?
I don't know. Yeah, there will be. I mean, on all my videos, people write comments, but I don't. I don't really have time to follow the comments that people write. Sometimes, if I notice any, I reply to them if people ask me questions. But I get so many emails and people communicating with me in so many ways. I just don't have time to reply to everything.
Yeah. Do you speak about Ajata in your book Happiness, on happiness?
I don't know. I certainly do. Probably I mention it there because it'd be a bit incomplete not to mention it. But in my blog, there are quite a few articles on Ajata.
Okay. Are you writing any new books?
Not at the moment. I don't have time, but I'm constantly, yeah. I mean, I could, but sometimes people suggest to me I should write a book, but I just live from day to day, and I'm constantly being bombarded with questions, and I don't have time to reply to all the things that I'm being asked. So I just do whatever I can, and the rest is in the hands of the gods.
Yeah. Is this all you do, or do you have a day job as well?
This is my day job and night job.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
My only break is I go for a walk every day. Other than that, this is my more or less takes most of my time, except for the normal mundane things of cooking and shopping and things like that. I mean, we all have to do those things, but this is my main occupation.
Well, and do you get donations to help you do this, or
yeah,
is it
people help, friends help.
Good? Yeah, good. All right. Well, thank you. I'll do my best to drop out.
Right. We're all doing our best, but we haven't yet. We need to be willing to let go of everything else. Dropping out is the easiest thing, but we're just not ready to let go of all these other things.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's not. It is easy. The problem is our lack of willingness. If we were willing to let go of everything, nothing would be easier.
Yeah, I guess it's knowing that you'll be taken care of by letting go, because we hold on to the fear of this and fear of that.
Our fear of, if we were high up in a tree and holding on to a branch, we would have reason to fear letting go. But we are not. We are not only on the ground, we are ourselves the ground. So we have nothing to fear. There's nowhere we can fall.